Welcome to Layer the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, let's discuss two kind of interesting albums in the AC/DC catalog. 74 Jailbreak, which was an EP, and Who Made Who, which was a soundtrack album. 74 Jailbreak came out in 1984, came out after Flick of the Switch and before Fly on the Wall. Flick of the Switch was a little disappointing sales-wise. I love Flick of the Switch. I did an in defense of video of that record. Leave a link to that video in the description. And it consisted of 5 songs. It was an EP, and 4 out of the 5 songs were taken from the Australian High Voltage. Before AC/DC had their international deal with Atlantic Records, they released 2 albums in Australia, the Australian High Voltage and TNT. When Atlantic picked them up, it took songs from both these albums and put them on the International High Voltage, which was one with Angus on the cover and the Lightning Bolt. Most of the songs on the International High Voltage are from this, but there were a few that weren't. So they show up here on the EP, and that would be You Ain't Got a Hold on Me, Show Business, Soul Stripper, and Baby Please Don't Go. So after this was released, the only song from this album that hadn't been released internationally then at that point was a song called Love Song, which is very curious, probably the only straight up ballad AC/DC has ever done. It's got acoustic guitar in it, love lyrics and everything. If you never heard it, it's really interesting. It's shown up now on the AC/DC, you know, those box sets they put out, the backtracks and things like that. So at this time, this was a pretty unique thing. You know, I didn't have that Australian High Voltage. It was hard to get. I had never even seen it. So this was really cool that I was getting 5 Bon Scott era songs that I had never heard before. And Jailbreak was from the Australian version of Dirty Deeds. That's another album that sort of has an interesting history. Atlantic Records did not want to release Dirty Deeds internationally, so they only released it, I don't know if it was just in Australia or just everywhere outside of North America. I'm not sure, but it wasn't released in America, North America, until after Back in Black and For Those About to Rock came out, and AC/DC was, you know, exploding. They wanted to capitalize on that, and they went and re-released Dirty Deeds and altered the track listing a little bit. So Jailbreak was on the original Australian Dirty Deeds, didn't show up on the internationally released one. So that was also a new song. So here you're getting 5 new Bon Scott era songs. It's kind of, you know, at this point in time with AC/DC, Brian Johnson's in the band, but that Dirty Deeds had gotten released. That was a huge, huge seller for them because of the success of Back in Black. And so this comes out, and I was very excited about this because I got to hear all these unreleased Bon Scott songs. Jailbreak is great, probably the best song on here, maybe along with Soul Stripper. Those are my 2 favorites. Jailbreak, they had a video for it that they had originally recorded back, you know, in '76, which, by the way, that's when the Australian Dirty Deeds came out in '76, so the whole '74 Jailbreak, you know, I don't know what that means. I think that the Australian High Voltage came out in '74, I believe, so maybe that's what they're referencing. I don't know. Who knows? But it was pretty cool. It was cool to hear these Bon Scott era songs. That video was getting played a lot on MTV, and Jailbreak turned into a pretty big hit for them. And this would go on to go platinum, which, you know, was pretty impressive because they had sort of lackluster sales of the Flick of the Switch album. Flick of the Switch kind of didn't live up to the expectations that they were hoping for, even though I absolutely love that album. It's kind of interesting to read the credits for 74 Jailbreak. As I was looking them up on Wikipedia, of course you got Angus and Malcolm, Bon, of course. But it lists George Young as playing bass as well as producing the record. Now, for those who don't know, George Young was Angus and Malcolm's older brother. He was in a band called the Easy Beats that had a big hit with Friday on My Mind. And George, along with his partner Harry Vanda, produced and sort of career, you know, mentored AC/DC in the early days and produced all their early stuff up to Highway to Hell when, Mutt Lange would come in, and they would even return later on and produce some of the later AC/DC Brian Johnson era albums. But he's listed as playing bass on all the songs here except for Jailbreak, which is played by Mark Evans, who is on High Voltage, Dirty Deeds, and Let There Be Rock. But if you go and look at the Wikipedia entry for the Australian High Voltage, it lists somebody named Rob Bailey as playing bass on the songs that are here on 74 Jailbreak. So I don't know what the deal is. Maybe if there's anybody out there that knows what's going on with the bass credits on these songs, let us know in the comments down below. All right, next then we had Who Made Who. This came out in, what year did this come out? This came out after Fly on the Wall. I didn't write down the year that it came out, so what would that have been? 86, I think. I could be wrong on that. This was a soundtrack to the movie Maximum Overdrive. I've never actually seen this movie. I hear it's sort of, has sort of a cult classic following to it, and I have to check it out because I just heard an interview with Simon Wright, who was the drummer at this time. He came in and replaced Phil Rudd after they recorded Flick of the Switch. Simon Wright came in and he was on Fly on the Wall, and he's on this, and he would be on Blow Up Your Video. But I heard an interview with him, and he was talking about how there is some little bits and pieces of music that kind of made it as like background stuff in the movie that is not on this soundtrack. So it's interesting. It's a soundtrack, but it's kind of more like a compilation album because you get previous release songs like You Shook Me All Night Long. It's fun that there's 2 songs from Fly on the Wall on here: Sink the Pink, Shake Your Foundations, Hell's Bells. You get a Bond song on here, Ride On, which is a pretty cool one to pick. You get a new song, Who Made Who, which got a ton of radio airplay and was a really, really big hit for them. It was probably one of their biggest radio hits since the songs from Back in Black. Who Made Who was a huge radio hit for them. And you get 2 instrumentals, which is really interesting. AC/DC, not really a band, they don't do instrumentals, right? Not on their studio albums. They do have a song, what is that Fling Thing? It was a B-side of a single, which was them playing like this sort of Scottish Celtic melody song. I can't remember. It was the B-side of one of their really early singles. But here you get DT, and the other one is Chase the Ace. So you also get For Those About to Rock, We Salute You here on the record here. And it's interesting. It's interesting to hear AC/DC playing instrumentals. You wouldn't think that it would work with AC/DC because they're just a straightforward band that if you took the lyrics out, it wouldn't be very interesting. But it's kind of cool. You get to hear Angus kind of stretching out and soloing, and DT has a pretty cool laid-back riff to it. There's a cool spot where it sort of drops back and it gets mellow, and then it gets heavier again. And Chase the Ace is a little more upbeat, but it's got some really, really great guitar playing from Angus, and it sort of makes you wonder, if these guys, to hear these guys jamming like that and just being kind of free, taking a riff and Angus just going off on it, it's pretty interesting, and these work pretty well. So this is really, for me, the only time I really pull this out is when I'm curious to listen to those instrumentals. The song Who Made Who, it's not one of my favorite AC/DC songs. It's got a real it almost sounds like a drum machine. I know it's not a drum machine, but the way the beat is, it's so straightforward. I mean, it's catchy and everything, and the guitar the main riff is kind of quirky and unique for AC/DC. So, but it's just not a song that it's a little too poppy and radio rock for me. But the instrumentals on here are really cool, and they're really interesting. So, all right, let me know in the comments down below what your experience is with 74 Jailbreak and Who Made Who. I mean, if you're of my age, and I always talk about Back in Black was the album that got me into hard rock, and I worshipped AC/DC. So when these came out, they were sort of nice little fillers here while you were waiting for another studio album. And it's kind of incredible how much stuff was coming out from AC/DC. Besides the studio albums, Dirty Deeds getting re-released, Who Made Who, 74 Jailbreak, and everything. So there was a lot of AC/DC stuff going on at this time, and I really appreciated 74 Jailbreak. A little disappointed in Who Made Who, but it was kind of cool to hear those instrumentals. So let me know what you guys think of these two albums down there. Make sure you check out my socials. Till we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.